Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Little Africa News is on the spot. My name is Mona Davids, and I am the host of On the Spot and the publisher of Little Africa News. This evening, joining us, we have Leonardo Coello and Michael Oliva. Michael Benjamin, who was scheduled to join us, is delayed, so he will not be joining us this evening. Leonardo and Mike, if you could, please introduce yourself to our audience again, to our viewers who aren't familiar with you yet.
Thank you, Mona. Victory Systems Elections Vice President. It's an honor to be here with you again. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, how are you? Good to be with you guys again, too. Michael Oliva, President, Sykes Global Communications.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, again for joining me today at On the Spot. So last week, we talked about redistricting. And the big redistricting news, in addition to, of course, the Bronx being disrespected again, is the maps, the proposed maps by the Redistricting Commission. And, one of the biggest changes was in regards to the Bronx that has 4 seats going down to 3 seats, and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's seat, expanding further into the Bronx, into Co-op City and Riverdale. Where the demographics aren't exactly democratic socialists. And then, today was the Iron Dome vote in Congress, and AOC, who's very pro BDS, actually surprised many people, but I guess she sees the writing on the wall, and voted present on the Iron Dome funding, Israeli Defense Systems funding. So, I'll start with you, Mike. What do you think the fact that Riverdale voters, who a large number of them are Jewish people, do you think that in any way affected the shocking present vote of AOC's?
Absolutely. I mean, I guarantee you that her position will continue to be modified as time goes on throughout this election cycle. But as you know, and we spoke about this last week, but I'll speak about, there's a larger issue too, where you see again and again, and as we were talking before the show, there was a vote to fund the Capitol Police. She's been a defund the police person. She also voted present for that vote. The squad split in whatever way was necessary that it just passed. She claimed it was because there was, there were mental health services that were in the bill, and that there was, retirement pension funding in the bill. Neither of those things were in the bill. This was a vote to straight fund those police. And, the rent moratorium, that there was sort of a form of protest outside of, the Capitol. Supreme Court overturns it, everybody goes home, and you see vote after vote after vote, where unlike what the Tea Party did, during the Obama administration, I feel like the squad has had an opportunity to really sort of like control the debate. I mean, they can almost like stop the Democrats from passing anything, and time after time, it seems to go the other way. It seems somewhat opportunistic to me, and I wouldn't be surprised if that filtered down into the local level as far as the folks in Riverdale go and other places in the Bronx that she's gained, that her position will change on that. And the other part of it is that, these elections often hinge on, people's short memories. And if you work it the right way enough and you sort of, you can put a lot of stuff in your mail and a lot of stuff in your social media, you can convince people that you're on the right side of the issue. So there's certainly enough time to do that.
Leonardo?
Well, I'll
What are
be
your
honest with you, Mona. I was looking at that vote like the meme with the guy eating popcorn. Like I was like, oh my God. Like I wanted to see where she was going to land with her vote and stuff. And so, you know, yo no sé. I don't know what the ramifications or the reason why she voted the way she voted. I do know that she is going to have to walk a very tight rope these next couple months, you know, with the back of her mind, what these, you know, lines are going to look like and stuff. And so it's very interesting to see, you know, how she navigates it. You know, I don't put anything past, you know, AOC. I think she's a very smart, intelligent person. And, you know, they'll figure out the best course for her, but she does have some choppy waters ahead of her.
And by the way, it's not just, the addition of like certain Jewish voters, certain Black voters, some Italian voters, and white ethnic voters. It's also, against Crowley, she did not win the Latino parts of the Bronx. So there's sort of like less of the white gentrified area, and more of that, and more of these other groups we're talking about. It's a very tough seat. It's a tough election.
I mean, it's scary because, I mean, if you look at it, I think we mentioned here on the show before, you know, she actually had less votes on her reelection than the first time. And the second time she had an enormous amount of money and stuff, right? So the money didn't translate into votes, you know, that second time around. And, you know, if it's going that trend, then it's going to be challenging moving forward, you know, in this coming election for her.
You know, there's a saying that a lot of people use when discussing some of the progressives, and that is that they eat their own. And, you know, AOC seems to be on, on their bad list lately between the Met Gaylor debacle, where protesters were arrested outside while she was at a $35,000 ticket. Granted, it was, it was free for her as an elected official, but there is a hypocritical element to her. She says one thing and then she does the other. So you talk about taxing the rich, but you go to one of the most elite rich events of the year. You talk about free Palestine. You push an anti-Israel narrative. And then now, when you have a chance to take action and vote no on something that you've been saying, the Palestinian people are under attack. Israel is killing the Palestinians. Stop funding Israel. It's an apartheid state going on there. She goes and she votes present. Not only is it hypocritical, but it's also a cowardly act. So it's going to be interesting to see how her positions are going to continue to evolve, while this redistricting process continues, because who is the real AOC here? So
Right.
But there's a conundrum, right? Because it's like, you know, if you take those statements that you made, but then at the same time, you know, she's kind of like the shining star of the progressive movement and stuff. And so, it's a tough call, you know, for whoever are the days that you mentioned when it comes to the progressives. It's like she's our number one player, but you know, at times she kind of hurts the team a little bit. So what do you do? Like, what position is the progressive movement in when it comes in terms of AOC?
Right. I actually heard this from Glenn Greenwald, who was her champion at The Intercept when she first ran. I was involved back then, spent some time with her. I knew sort of like people behind her and the thought process as well. But he talked about Chris Hayes, who's an MSNBC host, he wrote a book, and he had a concept called cognitive capture. And ironically, I think it happened to him as well. But cognitive capture is sort of like, once you enter an elite world, you inevitably become part of those elite people. You're in an echo chamber. Your Nancy Pelosi befriends you. You get that. Whatever, you get that house in the Hamptons. You're going to these parties. The Met Gala, and especially, remember, she's a very young person, and it's not so easy to be overtaken by all of that. None of us are immune. You could be the most working class poor person, comes up from nothing, and you're suddenly in that world, and it changes you in a way. And I feel like that it's very hard. A party is a very big infrastructure. It's a large thing. It has a platform that it puts out every year. It has thousands and thousands of delegates, and like to try to change a party from within a party, that's not a very easy thing to do. We keep thinking Democrats are going to do that, and it'll be Bernie, or it'll be Cory Bush, or Jamal Bowman, or her, and it's sort of like it doesn't happen. And sometimes you have, what we have to confront is like, maybe it's what we need is another party. You see that Andrew Yang is starting sort of like a moderate party, and then there's some people who were formerly in the AOC campus starting something called the People's Party. With all the frustration over Trump and now Biden, maybe these things will finally start to sort of surface, and we'll see some actual change, whether it's progressive, moderate, or otherwise.
No, I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch, and even Jamal Bowman's vote of yes, for him right now, he represents Riverdale with this large Jewish demographic, but with the redistricting, it doesn't seem like he'll be representing Riverdale anymore. So,
but it's all Westchester. There's no more Bronx, so it's probably even more of a Jewish district than he was representing, without Riverdale.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's true. That is true. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. But it's really interesting. So I'm curious what's happening online on social media, because the left really went after her over the Met Gala debacle, and now she's clearly done a 180 on this issue. So it's going to be interesting, their response to her.
By the way, optically too, like we keep seeing this on the left, right? So you go to the Met Gala, all the workers have masks on, and none of the guests do. Gavin Newsom goes out to dinner none of them are wearing a mask. He tells everybody to wear a mask, and the guy who determines the mandates in the state is there without a mask as well. Nancy Pelosi is getting her haircut. It's like we keep seeing these sort of like class issues around masks, where there's these elected officials saying everybody's got to wear a mask, and then they keep getting caught without them. And now we're seeing them without them in the room with people who wear them, who are the servers, and it wasn't a very good look. That makes sense.
Yes, it wasn't, and that just comes back to the hypocrisy. Who is the real AOC, I guess is the best way to put it. But we'll see what happens. We'll see how the left is going to hold her accountable for that vote. And if she's indeed redistricted into Co-op City and into Riverdale, very moderate constituencies, I don't think the Democratic socialist ideology is going to go over well in those areas. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch this unfold. And like Leonardo, I'll have my popcorn and just be watching. But continuing on with this national conversation before we head into local and state news, I want to talk about what's happening at the U.S. border. We've seen the news reports. We've seen the photos of the Haitian migrants trying to cross over from Mexico into the U.S., into Texas, and we see Border Patrol on horseback with whips. I don't know about you, but I was horrified. I couldn't believe that something like this is still happening in this day and age. I have never, ever, ever seen Border Patrol on horseback with whips doing the same thing to any other group of immigrants that are coming over from Mexico. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about Hispanic immigrants, because I also know Hispanic migrants, because I also know of other groups who enter through Mexico, who go to Mexico and then they come in, including Africans. A lot of Africans do that. They find their way there and then they come in that way. So, but that being said, we're looking at thousands of Haitian migrants, and this is how they're being treated. And it's completely heartbreaking to see them with children, with toddlers struggling, and then being chased by a man on a horse with a whip. And, listening to the White House press secretary today, all she really had to say was, yes, they were shocked and they've spoken with Homeland Security, and Homeland Security is no longer going to use horses and chase people on horses. But that's not good enough. How could something like this happen in this day and age? How do you treat them so inhumanely? So I'll start with you, Leonardo. I mean, what are your thoughts on this matter?
I mean, you hit it right on the head, Mona. It was heartbreaking to watch. When I was looking at the pictures as they came through my timeline, I thought somebody was like color enhancing some pictures from like, the 60s, and, like, I don't know, like some old pictures that maybe people were color enhancing or something. I could not wrap my mind around the thought that was something that was currently happening in, in our country and stuff. And, I'm actually kind of a little bit at a loss for words, Mona, about it. I agree with you. Like, the statement from the White House was kind of just, like, yeah, it's not good. They're not gonna do it again. Like, no, like that's not just it. And I know Biden is not Obama, but you know, former President Obama had the ability to have a pulse of the country, that when something came up that felt like it cut a little deep in a different way, it got addressed a little different. And I think that's where Joe should have kind of stepped in a little more and given that a different type of message at the end of the day. Looking at it from a political perspective, I think this and the Afghanistan kind of gives a sense of like, there's a sense of chaos almost, which I don't really think, is happening right now under this administration, but just the images are just really bad. The folks holding on to the planes, and now this, it just really gets a sense of like everything is out of control for folks. And I'm concerned a little bit. I'm concerned that the tide might start to switch to where, President Biden is a really good guy, but he's just not able to handle all of this that's happening. And the last time I think that narrative kind of came up was back with former President Jimmy Carter. And according, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was the last one-term Democratic president and stuff. So I just hope that history doesn't really repeat itself at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I would add to that chaos. The mixed messages around the pandemic, and This drone strike too. I mean, you saw where really it looked like they murdered a bunch of innocent people. They lied and said one of the people was a terrorist. It was really mostly children. And when Anthony Blinken was being questioned by Congress, he just didn't have answers, and it doesn't seem like Biden even has like the cognitive wherewithal to like give a speech like Obama would to say like, hey, this is wrong. We're going to do something about it. He put Kamala Harris in charge of immigration. There was an interview with her yesterday. It felt like a word salad. It felt like she didn't know she was running the operation almost. I mean, it feels like there's a lack of leadership and there is a lot of chaos right now. And, the amazing thing is like, the reason there's so much of this happening is a lot of these people, not only was there an earthquake, but in Brazil, they hired a lot of Haitian people to do the Olympics, the World Cup. And, once these jobs were over, they had nowhere to go, and you have to remember the history of this country. It's like they were one of the only islands to stand up to their oppressor. They weakened Napoleon like significantly. It led to the Louisiana Purchase. I mean, John Adams was for Haiti, and then Jefferson was very much against Haiti. So there's always been a confrontation, a relationship between this country and Haiti in a lot of ways, and that's not a good thing. And I'm gonna like piggyback on Leonardo too, like. This was the kind of thing that you saw like during slavery, where people would like whip people who tried to get away. Like this is horrific stuff. And the one thing that I will add though is I think a lot of these outraged Republicans, if what happened under Trump, might have been cheering it on. So I think sometimes that's a little bit hypocritical. It depends on what all of a sudden they think it's so horrible to round up, people who are trying to get into the country and get rid of them. Which it is, but they are right in the sense that it is horrible. And at least without, if you take out the hypocrisy part, the criticism is well-founded. And, the thing that it shows people is that these policies do not change. I say this, I feel like I say this on every show we do. They don't change. The cages have existed for a long time. It's an ad hoc policy. The Democrats only seem to be pro-immigration when they're running, and then when they get into office, it's like, well, it's all out the window, and we're going to be tough. And Kamala Harris is saying, "Don't come," and it's like, at some point, Latino voters and any voter, whether you're Haitian, European, wherever you may be from, if you're an immigrant, they're going to give up on this message. It doesn't seem like it's sincere, and they're going to be confronted with a real decision in this election as to what they're going to say, what their position is going to be, and they better be clear about it.
No, Mike, you make some very, very good points, because during the campaign season, they were so pro-immigration. They kept on hitting the Trump administration over the children in cages. But, that started under the Obama administration.
Right.
And let's not forget, under the Obama administration, where Joe Biden was vice president, there was a time when they controlled both houses. And immigration, they could have done so much more when it comes to immigration reform and providing undocumented or illegal immigrants a path to residency and a path to citizenship. But they didn't. But that's what they hammered, on with the Trump administration. And then once they're in there, after getting the support, the groundswell of support from our immigrant communities, they're there now, and they say, as she said, as Vice President Kamala Harris said, do not come. That's their message. Do not come. So, it's a bait and switch, and it's a flip-flop. It's
also the Democrats are now the party of like all elite people, right? I mean, remember the rich Republicans? They vote Democrat now, right? So like those folks want people coming in, right? This is like cheap labor. Like they're actually getting funding from this. So there's a lot of mixed motivations here. You're trying to get a certain vote, specifically the Latino vote, especially in the southern border. You got funding coming from other directions. Of course, the Democrats, like they're trying to get the middle. So there's a lot of conflict. So I'll give the Republicans one thing, like they do with they say they're going to do. Like the Democrats try to finesse everything, and you end up looking exactly what you're doing, which is being influenced by too many factors instead of what you think is right.
Yeah, no, that's true, and it's going to be interesting to see if voters are going to hold them accountable with with the next congressional elections coming up.
And the chaos, by the way, under Trump, is people that they didn't like his chaotic behavior. This is another form of chaos, and like I said, will a third party emerge? Because I think there's a lot of people who aren't going to know where to go.
But Mike, there's some good things that are happening, and the thing that frustrates me about the Democrats is just that they just do not do a good job of balancing out, the media when it comes to what's happening. Like, the legislation that was passed that is putting money into the bank accounts of many Americans right now every month. If you speak to the majority of people and say, do you know where that money's coming from? Like, most people won't even know. Like,
right.
That is coming from legislation that the Democrats put together that's going to help eradicate poverty, especially children that are in families with children that are in poverty. But these people are getting these deposits every month. They have no idea where they're even coming from and stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So they just
and Trump withheld it to sign the check, right? He took full credit.
Right, exactly. He wanted his name to be on it.
So
they just don't do a good job when it comes to those things either.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's really unfortunate, and it's not just that. I also haven't seen such a quick turnaround on deportations as they are doing with the Haitian migrants, because as they come in, they're deporting them out with with such efficiency that it's very, very unusual. And to me, and I'm saying this as a Black woman, not as a woman of color, as a Black woman, that this efficiency or this haste or this turnaround with them coming in, then they deport them and they're sending them back to Haiti that's just recovering from the earthquake that happened. And these are people who haven't even been in Haiti, haven't been back home for years. And you just putting them on a plane and dumping them. They say that they're providing services for them and other support. But from what I've heard speaking with Haitians that I know here in New York City, that's not happening. And I really hope that the immigrant community, the entire immigrant community, I want to see the Make the Roads and all of these other immigrant advocacy organizations. I would like to see them come out for the Haitians and what's happening there the way they come out for the Hispanic migrants that are coming in. That's what I want to see. I want to see all of these national immigrant advocacy organizations standing together against this atrocity. Because eventually, if they're doing it now to the Haitians, they're gonna start to mistreat the other migrants the same way. But I'm not seeing that. I saw the press conference that Assemblymember Ronise Bashort did yesterday at Brooklyn Borough Hall with a handful of Haitian elected officials. I didn't see not one person, not one individual from any of the many immigrant advocacy organizations that are here in New York, both local and national. They're nowhere to be found. And I don't understand what is that about? Don't these Haitians' lives and well-being matter? Are they not equal to all of the other immigrant groups that are coming in? There's something wrong there. So I'm going to call it and I'm going to say, well, maybe they really don't care because guess what? It's just Black people and it's just Haitians. So I would like to see all these so-called well-funded, progressive immigrant groups, everybody and their mother on the front lines, addressing this and holding our elected officials, and especially the Biden administration that's supposed to be welcoming of everyone, holding them accountable, because this is wrong. Like, this is America. You can't be going around on a horse whipping people in 2021. So, it is so disturbing. And, I really hope this is addressed, because like you said, Mike, Haiti has a rich history. When you look at Haitian history, when you look at what they accomplished with their independence, all that they've been through, there seems to be this disrespect for the Haitian people, and that's very.
What's also amazing, I've been to the Dominican Republic a few times, and I was in places like Sosua and Cabadetta, and like where you meet a lot of people, people who come here tend to be like more like sort of urban people, and just and talking like as if it's a different like people, and they all live on the same island. It almost reminds me of Israel and Palestine, where like inevitably the people are going to be somewhat the same because of proximity and the fact that people do what they do, right? And it's a shame, and I do agree with you in the sense that like I wish there was more unity and saying, look, we're all people who've been through a lot, the slave trade, like all sorts of oppression from not only European forces, but also like people. There's a class and race structure in those countries as well, right? And we really got to get past that and make sure that everybody has equal access to whatever form of amnesty we can give them if they're being oppressed in their own country or in a country where they try to find work.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see what's going to happen, but I mean, I'm watching it, and I think the entire immigrant community, and as a matter of fact, I think the entire African diaspora,
Right.
including our Afro-Latino brothers and sisters, everyone really needs to come out in support of our Haitian brothers and sisters, because no group should be treated like not even second-class citizens. So I'll continue to follow it, and hopefully we have some good news to report next week. But this week it's different. We started with some national news. Now I want to just pivot to our local news, and the big story, which is the unions losing out on their court bid to stop de Blasio's COVID mandate. So, what did either of you expect the judge in the end to rule on the side of the city? Because there's, granted, many city workers have been vaccinated, but there's still a large amount of city workers who are not vaccinated, who refuse to be vaccinated. And, now they either vaccinated on Monday if they don't have a religious or medical exemption, which I hear is extremely hard to get, especially the medical exemption, because apparently you have to prove that you've never, ever taken a vaccine. So it's, I know a lot of folks who work for the Department of Education and work for the other unions that are also in the schools, staffers from DC 37, Local 372, of course, Local 237, our school safety agents, our parent coordinators also under 372. And then, of course, the UFT members, the teachers, the guidance counselors, like everyone is in an uproar because come Monday, they better have at least one vaccination shot. So, I mean, are either of you surprised by this? And also, a second question is, do you think de Blasio went ahead and did this because he is a lame duck mayor and he doesn't care if he pisses off the unions? Or start with Leonardo.
Was I surprised? No, not at all. I think I said on here on the show, on one of our shows, I said once the vaccines were approved, CD, and by Food and Drug Administration, everybody, then that's it. I think it was at that point it was going to be a losing battle for anybody that did not want to get vaccinated. So I was not surprised by the ruling of the judge. I am the only thing that I am surprised about is that it almost feels like it's a lot to do about nothing, though, because at the end of the day, when I looked at the numbers, it said 87% of teachers are already vaccinated, and 80% of all DOE employees are already vaccinated, at least with one already. So I'm like, okay, so then what is this about? Like, if 87% of the teachers are already vaccinated, like at the end of the day, why is it such a big to do and stuff? Once we knew that the vaccines were approved, we knew that this was happening and stuff like that. I'll tell you the thing that was most surprising to me, being a former school administrator. Bill de Blasio made a statement. He said, well, for whoever doesn't want to get vaccinated, we have a slew of substitute teachers ready to go. I was like, really? Well, things done changed a lot, because as an administrator, not too long ago, Mona, it was like, you know how difficult it was to get a substitute teacher to come in when we had a teacher call out. It was like there would be times that we would never even see a substitute teacher and stuff like that, and they were like, oh, we just don't have enough. So all of a sudden, Bill de Blasio was able to just drum up all of these substitute teachers that are all vaccinated and ready to jump in if any teacher calls out. I'm like, I don't know about that. That's what I'm surprised most about, Mona.
Yeah, no. Every time they keep on saying that, I think to myself, stop lying. You know you're lying. Stop lying. We all know it's not like that when it comes to substitute teachers. I think in one of the interviews they said they have an army of vaccinated substitute teachers, and I'm like, where they at?
Right.
So, but if that's what they want to go with to, I guess ease whatever concerns parents may have come next week that their children won't have teachers. But again, like you said, and I'm a parent, and I know that it's not that easy for schools to get substitute teachers. So
No way.
I don't know where that army
maybe it was a scare tactic. Maybe it was some sort of scare tactic to teachers or something. But trust me, the teachers know, anybody that's associated with the schools know that it is very difficult to get a substitute teacher to come in. There's not really that many of them, and the ones that they are, there's not too many of them that's that good either, Mona. So that's the scary part.
Yeah, I think the judge, I didn't read that closely on it, forgive me, but said there was precedent and, it was within the policing powers of the city. Was that how it was worded? But what's interesting to me, though, is like, if you are, against getting the vaccine, to be consistent, you should also be for, John Liu's remote learning bill, because, I try to watch as much as I can from all over the political spectrum, and I try to read what I can. And every day somebody's coming on with a new set of facts, and we got data from Israel, and look, people were vaccinated and they still got sick. And I'm hearing like so many different things, and I'm starting to realize we don't know. There's a lot we don't know, right? And sometimes these pandemics have to run through the population for long enough, and we do what we can to mitigate them, and hopefully it becomes something that's more manageable. But that's why I think like the people who are for this remote learning bill have a very good point, because you might, especially working people, there could be 3 generations of people in your house. Your grandmother could be there. Your child could transfer that to her, or your grandfather, or somebody who's not as healthy as the average person, and you could have a real problem. So these fears are founded, and I think that it can't be both ways. Like if you're not going to make sure everybody's vaccinated, you're gonna have to have that remote option.
The only scary thing about the bill though is the way that it's worded. The remote learning would kick in based off like a certain infection rate in an area and stuff. And
Right.
According to that bill, if it was to be passed right now, the entire New York City would be kicking into remote learning right now. So that's the.
Oh, I didn't realize it was. I thought it was like an optional situation. I didn't realize like it would just be everybody.
Yep.
No, but I think it was September 8th, and I actually tweeted a reply. On September 8th, there was a group of state legislators, that signed a letter to the Department of Education asking them to please implement a remote learning option. This is September 8th. Schools were starting on Monday, September 13th. I don't understand why those state and assembly legislators were signing a letter asking the Department of Education, de Blasio, the school's chancellor, to have a remote learning option. You're the legislators. And in my, when I saw the letter, I replied to the tweet that, this is just theatrics. Because if they really wanted to, I'm going to find that tweet and I'm going to share it. If they really wanted to, they could have introduced a bill months ago requiring in a city of more than blank number of students. Usually, it would always be in a city of more than 1 million students. That's how the language would be written in whatever bill, because then you knew it was just applying to New York City. But since we've lost so many kids in the last year and a half, we're below 1 million. So whatever, in a city with more than 800,000 students, that a remote learning option is required. They could have done this. They should have done this. And that's what I said in my tweet reply. You all should have done this months ago. Look, for me, my son is in school. When schools opened last year, my son went back to school. Okay. But I do understand that families need that option, because yes, a lot of families, live with the grandparents. And the last thing we want is a student taking, being asymptomatic, but going and infecting their grandmother or grandfather. Imagine as a child knowing that you're responsible for them being in the hospital, or Lord forbid, something even worse happening. So, and then you also have parents, or you have students that parents just don't want to take a chance with. Maybe students with severe asthma. The last thing we need is a child with severe asthma to get COVID. But they didn't. And I just don't understand. It's like, it's too late. It's too little. It's too late. And then they're talking about that, okay, they're trying to get this passed when the legislature returns in January. Like, for real? Please make it make sense. That's all I'm asking. Please tell me, what is John and RJ thinking?
Here's a crazy idea, though. Maybe, like, if they would have had the foresight you're talking about, the 20-30% of the people who didn't want to get vaccinated, who were teachers, and the 20-30% of the students whose parents didn't want to go to school, could have had an optional enrollment process. We could have worked out a system where it kind of like worked for everybody's needs, instead of, like Leonardo just said, it's completely based on, the levels of COVID in your county or whatever. Like, if they would have the foresight, they might work something out that actually worked for a lot of people,
No, I mean, that's true. And Leonardo, with your education background and as an administrator, couldn't the Department of Education, like how we have a District 75 program, couldn't they just have created a, I don't know, District 76 program for remote learning, and so that the onus and the responsibility is not on each individual school, for example, and that even not just traditional public school students, but also charter school students whose parents choose remote learning, everybody goes into that District 76 program, whatever number they want to call it. I mean, couldn't they have done something like that? I mean,
Of
how?
course. And they could have used the army of substitute teachers that Biden had to do the remote teaching. It just makes too much sense, Mona. It just makes too much sense. But yes, absolutely, you could have, because speaking to many teachers, there was teachers that was like, no, I'm ready to go back. There were some other teachers that was like, if I had the option from teaching from home, I'll take that option. Then you could have had a hybrid version. Some teachers that come in teach, in school. Some teach outside. Like, you could have set all of this up. I mean, don't get me wrong. It would have been hard, Mona. It would have been hard. But this is what our leaders are supposed to do, is to take on these hard challenges and really sit down with some of the most intelligent people that we can find and say, look, let's map this out. Let's put this together. And we have months to do it. But I don't know. You said, please make it make sense, but it's difficult to try to make it make sense, Mona, because I just don't understand. Because this could have been done. This truly could have been done if the effort, if the planning, if somebody would have really sat down and said, like, look, let's all sit down. But I think there's too many moving parts, right? I think, like you said, there's a lame duck mayor going out. You got a chancellor that took off because he was scared that the money he was giving to some girlfriend he had was going to come to light and stuff. And then they throw everything on this new chancellor that comes in, and now she has to try to fix it for everybody now. Like, it was just too much and not enough buy-in at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Leonardo. Um, let's just hope that with with these COVID infection rates, that they continue to stay low, and we don't have a lot of schools closing, like the District 75 school that had to just be shut down because of high infection rates. And actually, it wasn't the students; it was staff, it was teachers who were infected that resulted in the school shutting down. So, but let's fingers crossed, but I'm not holding my breath on this bill that's only going to be discussed and pushed forward in January. That's just it's too little, too late. And even though I understand next June is a primary, but come on, don't play us for fools. Don't play parents for fools. They should have done this a long time ago. But continuing talking about schools, last week we had Greg Floyd on, the president of Local 237, Teamsters Local 237, that also represents our school safety agents, along with NYCHA workers, Parks Department workers, different hospital titles, New York City Public Hospital titles. But we were talking about what had occurred from last week, Monday, the 13th, the first day of school, to Thursday, when we did the show. Since Thursday, I've lost count of the incidents that have been happening in the schools. We've had slashings, we've had more stabbings. At Truman High School on Wednesday, you had a stabbing and a car crash all happening at the same time. We've had shootings on the perimeters of high schools. It's just complete and utter madness out there right now. And the Post did a story a couple of days ago where Eric Adams, where the headline was, Eric Adams is going to block the transfer of school safety agents from the DOE, from the NYPD to the DOE, which is great news for us. I know that the position of mayoral candidate Curtis Lewa is that they will stay. He's very clear that they will stay under the purview of the NYPD. Bill Pepitone, another mayoral candidate, also who is also a former police officer, is also very clear that they will remain under the purview of the NYPD. But with Eric Adams, it's interesting because his representative's comment to the Post is that Eric will reassess. It's not a definite answer. And in the Teamsters Local 237 mayoral candidates forum before the primary, Eric did say that clearly that they will remain under the purview of the NYPD. I've been in a Zoom where I personally asked Eric that question, and he told me they will remain under the purview of the NYPD. Okay? But now he's talking about reassess. And we have all of this crime, all of these incidents going on in the schools. So my question to you two gentlemen, what do you think is behind the word reassess? Is it because he wants to make sure that the progressives or the folks who are anti-NYPD and, you know, who are anti-school safety, or who say school safety is responsible for the school to prison pipeline? Is it because he wants to make sure he gets those votes? Or is he just telling people what they want to know, depending on which group he's speaking to? Because I don't understand. Eric's been very clear when it comes to safety. He says he's bringing back the plainclothes task force. He's bringing back some form of stop and frisk. I mean, these are two controversial, police tactics. So I don't understand, what does reassess mean? What am I missing? What is the reason? Please help me, and parents, please help us make sense out of that one too.
I'll go. Well, what I found interesting too was, well, first let me say, and we spoke about this on the phone earlier, fights do happen in schools all the time. Any of us who've been in a few know it's a great way to spread COVID, by the way. So it's more serious than just a black eye, or and the mayor, or the to-be mayor, said himself, it's more serious than just sort of like scuffles and fistfights. I mean, there's some serious violence which is on the rise, and so I would think that, like you said, to be consistent with his campaign message, he would think that it should stay with the NYPD instead of the DOE. But there are three positions on this, right? Because public advocate Jumaane Williams and Mark Traeger, who's a councilman, have actually said it should be social workers, which I think when people are saying it's even more violent than it had been before the pandemic, Bill Maher told a great joke. He said, some people think social workers should show up at crime scenes. And he said, well, how about we give them a badge so they can identify themselves, and a siren on the car so they can get there fast, and a gun so they can defend themselves, and so I do feel like the voices that he's hearing are not just between the DOE and NYPD. There's another side, is even sort of more left of that, who's saying, no, it should be social workers, right? So there's probably a lot of input that he's having to deal with. But my guess is he comes down on the side of, and he's raising a lot of money right now, by the way, but he comes down on the side of, the police remaining in control of security, and maybe even strengthen it a little more.
Yeah, Mona, in conversations with folks in his circle, I think that what's happening is, without a doubt, I think that they are going to remain on the side of the NYPD. I think the messaging hasn't really been too clear, because there's an understanding that those officers and those school safety folks that are going to be working in these schools, we need to reinvent what their job looks like. We need to reinvent their role. We need to reinvent their training. We need to reinvent, how they interact with school administrators and all these things. So all of those, we're kind of going into almost like uncharted waters here when we're trying to really redevelop what it means for those folks and those jobs and stuff. And I think they are going to kind of be the type of person that, or law enforcement or school safety person that is kind of like a slash, officer slash, social worker almost and stuff. But that comes from training. That comes from the understanding of how that the work is different inside of a school than what you're doing outside in the street and stuff, right? He's said things about even maybe possibly even just small things like changing what the uniform looks like. So there are some like in biases that we carry when it comes to the uniform, walking around our hallways and stuff, right? So maybe that means changing what that looks like and stuff. As an administrator, the thing that I was happy to hear is that they're going to really work on what does the relationship mean between the school administrators and those officers that are in the schools as well too, because a lot of times they work in separate silos, and they should be working together more. Like, when I had a direct relationship with one of them, with the officers, it's like it worked great. Like, I came in the morning, she told me, "Hey, Mr. Coello, this is what happened. This is what the kids are talking about. This is what the kids are telling me. All right, great. Let me talk to a couple of those kids." And so I would pull a couple of them, talk to some parents, really kind of get ahead of this stuff, circle back to that school safety agent, say, "Hey, look, I did this, okay, I'm gonna keep my eye on this," like all of these things. And that really worked well. But there were times where that didn't work well with certain people. They was like, "I ain't talking to you. I don't work for you. I work for, NYPD. I don't need to talk to you." So if Eric is talking about really putting, a framework around how that looks, then I think that could work. I think I'm excited about that.
Oh, sorry. I think that's like an extremely good point. And so what I think they're going to need to do is get some very elite individuals who aren't just sort of tough, but can emotionally deal with people, especially younger people. We often hear how like police don't want to respond to certain calls. Like domestic violence could be complicated, or a mental health issue, and we're going to have the type of cop who is able to do that, and that's gonna take a little bit of thought. And when we think about stuff like residency requirements or like housing for police officers, because remember, these are working people as well, especially if they're from the city, it becomes all the much more important that in community policing that they know the people in the community, because that inevitably breaks down a lot of barriers. So it's going to take a certain type of individual who isn't just somebody who can use his or her might, but also like his or her brain, and that's, I think, the best solution.
Yeah, that's huge, Mike. Because listen, some of the most effective agents that I spoke to, they knew kids and families by generations. They knew the young one that was there. They knew that one's little big brother. They knew the sister. They knew the mother. They knew the cousin down the street. Like they knew everybody, and they connected all the dots for you. And it's because, like you said, like they were entrenched in the community. And so I think it has to be a combination of all those things, and a lot of the ones that are there, they are those people already. It's not like you need to bring in all of these, folks that are gonna, do these great job of communicating with people and everything. Like a lot of them are all there. And I'm excited if they can kind of start to work on maybe some sort of like trainer to trainer programs, where you're taking the actual school safety ones that are actually great at what they do, and you connect them with like 3 or 4 new ones that are coming in, and you start to, they start to train them what to look out for, what to have conversations about, have shadowing programs that, you have a new school safety agent shadow a veteran one, for a while, and see how those interactions happen, see how those things work out. And then you just keep that process going until you just, all the schools are just, kind of stocked with people that really know what they're doing when it comes to connecting with these children and these families inside our schools.
Right. And I'm a believer, I feel like you should get like go through some extensive training, which is everything from, physical training to crisis training to, training on how to interact with people. But also sort of like, I would make it like you get a degree, like this is a real profession, right? You go through like a 3-year school and like, and you get paid a good wage for this, and like really take this stuff more seriously than we do.
No, I mean, this is the thing that people need to understand is that the school safety agents go through an extensive training program. Their training is 17 weeks, and they do everything that the police cadets do except for firearms training. And then in addition to that, they also, with the DOE, they also have more professional development, restorative justice, crisis intervention, all of that. Like their training is so extensive on both from the DOE side as well as the NYPD side with soft lockdowns, hard lockdowns, how to deal with a situation with an intruder in the building or somebody with a gun or, Lord forbid, another terrorist attack. So their training is really, really, really extensive. And many of our school safety agents, of course, as you'll know, they're Black, majority women of color, Black, brown, and Asian women, over 4,000 of them. And they're from the community. And they're the mothers, they're the grandmothers, they're the aunts, and they really do know these kids because the kids speak to the school safety agents more than they speak to the guidance counselor that may actually be in the building. And even with teachers, if there's a problem or a child needs to, as we say, go take a walk, just go take a walk down, or they will send them to the front desk to the school safety agent, and the school safety agent will be like, okay, so what's the problem? What you up to? Sit down here with me, tell me what's going on. So it's like they're like family members to those students. And then I've lost count of how many of them buy coats for the students, give the students lunch money. Like they do a lot. And then even the parents, even the families, they talk to the school safety agents. That's how they know who everybody is. So, the training is there, and many of them, even though it's just just a high school diploma is required, many of them continue with their studies. Like I know school safety agent, that's a veteran, a military veteran, has a bachelor's in criminology, has a master's in political science, and she loves to work with the kids, Quiet Simpkins. So it's, many of them continue their studies and they go into, the police force, or they go into corrections, or they go into Homeland Security and other law enforcement positions. So when it comes to the training, they actually receive more training on dealing with the kids than even the counselors and the social workers. They come in with a degree, but those school safety agents actually really get their training, restorative justice training, crisis management, dealing with a child that's having a behavioral meltdown. Like all of that, they receive that training. So for me, while I appreciate Eric and the Eric's position on it, I really don't think that there's anything to reassess. They either staying under the purview of the NYPD, which is what he's been saying up until recently, or you're gonna put them under the Department of Education. But he's a former police officer, he knows better, and he knows that the Department of Education underreports a lot of incidents as well. So I mean, for me as a parent, as a mother, I just wish that he would make his position more clear, not be so vague and wishy-washy right now on this, because we're literally in a crisis. And if he indeed has a plan, we'd hope that with all the transitioning going on, with him likely going to be our next mayor, that part of it is already the plan, his security plan for going forward for school safety. We cannot risk the safety and security of our children. And right now, things are really bad. And I know it's not just because it's kids being kids, and children are dealing with issues at home. They're dealing with learning loss, frustrations. The families are struggling. All of this is just a powder keg, but we still need to do our best to keep their children safe, no matter what, while we're dealing with that. And for me, you guys know my position. School safety needs to stay right where it is. But I hope that he really shares whatever his plan is, but not be vague and say reassess. That's just we. The question is, do they remain under the NYPD? Yes or no? If you've been saying yes, stay with yes. Don't say now reassess. So say yes to yes, no to reassess. How you like that?
That's the slogan right there.
But but the good thing is that he understands his background, he understands public safety, and he knows what's going on. So we'll see. Maybe it's just campaign messaging, as as some folks say. I'm looking at the time, and I don't want us to go too much over time, but I just want to end with the last topic, this situation with Rikers. I know we touched on it a little bit last week. Now there's the law that's been passed by Governor Hochul, which has a lot of people concerned, because where are these released inmates going to go? What type of programs and services are there going to be there for them? How are they just releasing them back because then they're coming into our communities? How do they decide who is going to be released? Because we're already dealing with, the gun epidemic. We're already dealing with crime. So, I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on, on Hochul's law to release these inmates? I'll start with you, Leonardo.
Well, it's really tough. That there's some things there that I do agree with. I am a bit sensitive to criminal justice reform. I'm at a point where like I'll take as much of it as I can get, even if there's some things that might be a little controversial and things like that. But a lot of things have to change, Mona. I'm I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and the amount of people that I know that were impacted by the criminal justice system is staggering and stuff. And so and just reading recently some statistics around, like the state of New York incarcerates they're the highest rate of
Yes.
incarcerations, especially, and even for people that have small violations for their parole as well too. They're just reincarcerating them. It's just it's a lot, and that's a big animal that needs to be taken down. There are some things that I'm in favor of. I don't mind the fact that she put in there, any offenders with like a minimum of 90 days are going to be transferred to state facilities, and taken out of places like Rikers and things like that. I don't have a problem with. Um, Things have to change, Mona. Is the bill perfect? No, it's not. But criminal justice reform needs to change in so many ways that I mean, you know what? I'll take it as a start.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's, letting people out is one thing, but when we talk about arraignments now, and just we have to put less people in jail. Like, we just have to. Now, if you commit an intentionally violent crime, a murder, a rape, or anything, I mean, obviously, like, those people need to be put away. They need a fair trial. They need, you can't let them run around. But it's too many people. And as far as like I don't blame a lot of the corrections workers for being overwhelmed. They're afraid of their health, their family's health. They have other facilities on Rikers Island. They can send medical people there. They can spread people out. They can sort of like take care of these people's healthcare needs and not have 35 people in the cell. Not, these people are still not proven guilty, and there are roaches and urine and all sorts of crazy stuff. And that's not just for the inmates, that's for the people who work there as well. But we have to decrease, you can't just say, well, let's arbitrarily let some people out. Like, less people have to go in. And you know what? Once in a while, someone's going to get arrested for shoplifting. We won't put them in, and they'll commit a murder, and the Republicans will make an ad, and it'll be on the news, and it'll be in the Post, and that'll happen. You will never have a perfect criminal justice system, but I think we have to have a lot more common sense in separating certain kinds of crimes from others, and a violent crime from a nonviolent crime. And I think that's where we start. But there's too many people in jail in this country. It's just a microcosm of the problem.
And just the parole system, Mike, if you think about it, there's people in there that, were violated because, they got to one of their appointments late.
Yeah.
I mean, are you serious? Like, all of us, we ride public transportation. You've seen what traffic looks like. You've seen all the, it's different, life is difficult enough in New York City, but that if you get, you can get put back. And I'm sure that there's plenty who have, because they went late to one of their meetings and stuff. And so, the whole parole system, everything at the end.
Frankly, I don't really care if you like go and have a drink. Like, just don't hurt anybody else. Like, show that you're a good citizen, and I'm good with that. I think it's just, we have to concentrate on people committing real crimes.
No, that's true. But the other part of my question is what services, what support is out there for these individuals once they are released? Because I'm not hearing anything about that.
Well, let me say this though, and we have no problem putting inmates into labor who do labor for corporations. Why don't we transfer those jobs to people who aren't incarcerated? Like, I don't know why. It's funny. Somebody, I forgot who I was listening to, said, during slavery, at least the owners had to actually control the people that they were enslaving. The government's doing it for corporations now, and it's just free labor. Why don't we take the people who get out of jail and try to get them into those jobs? I think that's the first step.
But the difficult challenge is that what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like, do we hold people in the jails until these programs are established, and then we let them out, and then now they join these programs, or do we rightfully make change to the criminal justice system? Folks are free for whatever reason or whatever, and then the need for these programs is presented, and then now the programs are built and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm not sure which one comes first. Like, how do we set that up?
And there are help wanted signs everywhere right now. If people had certain guidance and knew, you can do this, or we even, it's not just like social work aspect, but some sort of a match for if you have a minimum wage job, and which can lead towards paying for an education. I mean, we can do creative things that I think are better than what we're doing.
Well, I mean, I would think that there are already organizations, community-based organizations that provide these types of services to parolees, but I just haven't heard anybody talking about maybe those same types of programs providing these types of support services to these inmates that they're going to be released, because it's not easy for folks when they come out, and they need all the support that they can get, whether it's finding housing, finding employment, and other social services.
But like, why do we have to reinvent the wheel? Like, if I'm an elected official, send me. I would ask the criminal justice system, from all the people that you're letting out, send me a list of everybody that their address is in my district.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that doesn't, and then I would have some sort of constituent services for each one of them and say, hey, look, what do you need support with? Do you need support with housing? Do you need support with work? Do you need support? What do you need support with? And why is something like that being put in place and stuff? I'm sure we can track, right? People are being let out, like, we know what address they're going to, or whatever the case may be. Family members, next of kin and stuff, and say, hey, look, the elected official the elected officials, city, state, and federal, are reaching out saying that, look, we know that you've been released lately. What do you need support with, and how can we help and stuff? That doesn't sound like it's something that's
Right.
not crazy or feasible.
And we have a system for a reason. Like, if you've done your time that you've been sentenced to, or your behavior has been good, and you like that should be it, right? I mean, I know they passed laws about what you put on applications and stuff, but removing the stigma and like saying, giving people the support to say that, like, we're not going to judge you, like, we're going to like help you. Here's a job program that we can help you with. And I think what you said, it's not just after, it's before, right? It's like there are young kids who they're not even like aware sometimes of like, oh, you mean I could walk down to the diner and like apply for a job, like like just some sort of help people in the community. Maybe that's where, instead of responding to crime, NYPD social workers are coming better and make it sort of like, go to certain areas and really reach out to people and help them move into these areas. And I think if people take the initiative, instead of sort of like a social safety net, like, those people should be rewarded with some sort of like resources, right? Which is like, you've taken the initiative, here are the resources to help you get to the next step. And it goes along with, student loan relief too, which is give them an easier path to college, which you don't necessarily have to pay for out of their pocket or for the rest of their life because they don't have enough resources. There are things we can do before and after.
Well, Leonardo, I hope that that our elected officials, listen to your suggestion, because I think that is a great suggestion of something that they could do, especially in our communities that are really impacted with, with these hardships, especially now with the pandemic and with the gun violence. Like, if they can provide them with the support, and they know that they're in their districts and their constituent services liaisons can help them, I think that would be a very very good thing. And it's not just them saying let them out and don't keep them on Rikers, but they would actually be doing something about it, something productive, something supportive, instead of just talking, because that's the problem. They talk but they don't do. So we need them. These inmates are going to be released. They're coming back into our communities. Our elected officials should be leading the way in providing and ensuring that they get the proper support and services that they need. So with that said, gentlemen, I want to thank you again, as always, for joining us today for On the Spot. It's been a very interesting conversation. I know that we're going to have some stuff to follow up with next week, see what's going on. But, just coming back to the Haitian situation, like, I really hope next week we have some good news to talk about. And then seeing what's going to be the deal with come Monday and the COVID mandates. Let's see if that army of substitutes are going to be put to work next week. That's what I want to see. And, for our parents, I've been hearing some stories of parents being very angry when asked to produce a vaccination card to enter their children's schools. And, I just want to say to our parents out there, because one of the things that they're saying is that why must we show our vaccination card when you have people working in this building who are not vaccinated, meaning staff is. So come Monday, hopefully they can't say that anymore. We're pretty much all in this together. So it's all hands on deck. Let's be respectful of each other, and supportive of each other. It's a tough situation. And when it comes to our kids and our schools, we just need to make sure that our children are protected, not just physically, but we do what we can to protect them from contracting COVID. That's that should be the priority. So let's see what's going to happen come Monday, and let's see if that army of substitutes are going to be needed. So with that said, thank you so very much for joining us this evening on the spot, and we will see you next week, Thursday, here at 8 o'clock.
All right. Good night.
Good night.